So now the student of Delhi University from the faculty of law tells what are the main issues against this government of the Manipur University.
The Manipur University or Jawaharlal Nehru University, Delhi University, Hyderabad Central University or other campuses are in a very visible pattern seeing the amount of crushing of dissent, which is actually the fundamental principle of a democracy, and this is very dangerous. And when we stand next to Swami Vivekanand statue in Delhi University campus, I would like to share what he had said in a very foundational thought. He had maintained that the Hindu philosophy, which we see that this government at some level might want to propagate, talks not only about tolerance, but it talks about acceptance. And acceptance is a higher virtue, as also maintained by Tharoor in his book, Dr. Tharoor, that acceptance talks about the fact that if you have the truth and I have the truth, I will respect your truth, you respect my truth. There will be no conflict because we feel that there are different ways of achieving the divine. In the same sense, what I want to bring out is that as a student of this university, I feel, and the atmosphere around, that this crushing of dissent is really, really dangerous. And I feel that disobedience is the foundational value of democracy and liberty, and these are fundamental principles which we cherish. So my point is that we need to stand with such forces who today are standing against such forces which are crushing dissent and on the pretext of national security threats are bringing in institutions like the army into the campuses and alleging that there are threats to the security of the nation is something which is absolutely bizarre. If the ideologies and other thoughts do not match, we can deliberate and discuss about it. But to bring in institutions like the army is a great subversion of democracy and liberal spaces like campuses of students.
Is this a right way to hold down the voice of the students of the universities from of India, that we can say this government loses its credibility after doing this?
See, the point is that when it comes to students, what we cherish is that we want to ask questions. And when we come into these campuses, what we are taught throughout is, whether it's in law or in science, humanities, wherever it may be, what we are taught is essentially that to ask questions and to often disagree. And in this case, I want to maintain that all the growth of subjects which we've seen in different disciplines is based on the foundational principle of disagreement and dissent. And that only emanates when we are able to ask questions, when we are able to feel free that asking questions will not invite violence, will not invite threats to our life and liberty in general. So therefore, if those threats are around us, it hinders the intellectual functioning of a university. It not only hinders our physical security, but it also hinders and at some level restrains our intellectual faculties. And together we start living in an environment of constant surveillance and threat, that whenever we extend the line and move into a domain which is not acceptable to the ruling government or to their philosophy or their theory, then it becomes problematic and we need to stop our thought. But the fact is that thoughts are intangible and they cannot be measured that way. Intellectual progress and the growth of different disciplines cannot be limited by the restraints which are employed by government or other institutions. And therefore I feel that this entire idea of innovating in India and doing things creatively in India stands in complete contradiction to the government's idea of breaking down on these institutions and not allowing dissent and disagreement to emanate from these institutions. institutions. Because on one side, while you promote innovation and creativity to solve the problems of our country and the world at large, the other side, you crushing that same intellectual thought which sees no barriers and no bounds. So there is that fundamental contradiction which the government needs to reassess.
Can you suggest some suggestions to this government that no other in the upcoming elections the government can be in a danger?
See, the point is that I feel this is a situation which comes only when the government is working with an idea of fear, that they feel that whatever work they should have done or whatever work that they have done in the preceding 48 to 52 months is not good enough for the people to vote for them. And therefore, when they realize this, they work in some sense of fear and take up these measures to crush dissent. But the point is that they should be confident about whatever work they have done and therefore ask for votes and talk about their policies on those grounds. But when you are in a complete state of paranoia, you feel that you need to crush people who have alternative imaginations and who have alternative opinions. My only suggestion to any government possible in the future and any party in general would be that you allow universities to let them ask questions and ask questions which are not popular and ask questions which might unsettle the system and might change whatever the status quo is, so that newer thoughts emerge which can change the course of our country. And let debate in institutions persist, because if debate in institutions does not happen today, then tomorrow when we become parliamentarians, it will not happen there. And when there is no proper debate, and especially when you do not allow somebody to disagree, you would not have policies which can work to the best of their abilities for the people. So you see, there is a direct chain in thought that if students today are not allowed to debate, tomorrow your parliamentarians will not be able to debate properly and therefore make good policies, and therefore the people will not be benefited. So every right-thinking government should allow debate, should allow dissent, disagreement and deliberation, and also more importantly, it should let our imaginations move in the way we want them to move and not provoke them by these restraining factors, because at some level I feel that it will only strengthen our resolve to be more independent minded and to be more critical about whatever we see around us. And I stand in solidarity with the students and the faculty of Manipur University, because I think that it is another situation wherein you have eliminated alternative imaginations and approaches.
Yeah. We can see from the last many months that the protests from many universities or the many campuses are rise, but the government hold down or suppress the protest by sending the army or doing the lathi charge by the police. This is the right way to hold down the voice of the student or the youth of the nation?
See, I feel students have done a lot in establishing the political discourse in the country, and other than our student life, we also form the narrative and go beyond our student commitments into issues which are of importance to the society at large. And here I would like to commend and congratulate all universities which stand for opposition. I once remember it was said 4 years ago that why JNU today is an issue. It is an issue because it is one institution which does not only think about the pure academics and the work which it needs to do, but also thinks about the nation at large and the service which it needs to do to the nation at large. So the student body, the faculties and all independent minded people and the right thinking people are doing this contribution, are making this contribution to the world at large, to India at large. But my point is that we need to strengthen this resolve. This situation which has happened in Manipur University is something which again allows us to gather, collect and strengthen this narrative of an alternative viewpoint. However different or unpopular it may be, and it may not be only judged by electoral results, which are very crude explanation of a democracy, but also by the space which we give to these alternative imaginations. And that is very crucial, that we allow them to come in using the police or wanting surgical strike days to be celebrated on campuses, whether optional or not. My point is that student associations, student bodies, student wings will not embrace the country just because of a surgical strike or some kind of, tactical method which the army has employed. The point is that our patriotism is in our hearts. We don't need to wear it on our sleeves, and those who do, they do wear it on their sleeves. To bring in notices for, celebrating surgical strikes, or for that matter, to use police and the army in institutions which are supposed to be bereft of these institutions, is something which is highly undesirable, and we feel that it restrains, and I especially feel that it constrains to a great level the free thinking thought which is required to build new philosophies, to build new concepts and ideas, to shape them. And if we do not give them that space to come to fruition, if we do not let these ideas emerge, then I'm sorry, the entire idea of higher education, university education, and the concept of evolving our country through the youth and the demographic dividend is completely useless, and it will not benefit anybody at large.
After 2014, do you think that RSS always wants to make a concept in the mind of the youth like Bhagwa, all the campuses or all the universities or such many things in the color of Bhagwa or the saffron?
See, my idea is, when you talk about saffronization or you talk about Bhagwa, the RSS, my only point is that that is an imagination of India. And that is one thought which is given to this narrative of who an Indian really is. My point is that I may differ from them, and I certainly do differ from them. But the idea is, as Voltaire said, that you may disagree with one, but he will defend to death his right to disagree with him. So you let disagreements happen. If their idea of India is about a saffron cloth or saffronization in general and about the RSS, let it be. If my idea about India is that, which is an ever evolving concept and cannot be straight-jacketed into the restraints of Bhagwa, then let that be. Do not cause any kind of threat, intimidation, and insecure charges on students who are just trying to shape their imaginations. Give them your truth, that you feel that the narrative of Hindutva or the RSS can be an idea of India. If people find it good enough, they will accept it. But if they feel that the idea of India is not about Hindutva, the idea of India is about something which is so plural, something which brings in different kind of diversities, and that too in unity, then that can also be an idea of India. So you need to allow us to express that kind of imagination about India, and let the others express their imaginations. Do not make us factories into thinking that these are the products and they will imagine in this way, and the RSS will be their mode of thought, and the school and everything will be completely disciplined. It's only disobedience, as I already said, that disobedience is the foundational value of liberty. And those, as Henry David Thoreau said, and those who obey must be slaves. So that is the kind of school of thought I'm coming from, and we should allow disobedience today.
So now in the upcoming year, the Lok Sabha election is coming near, and can we say these protests and these student voices will impact negative image for this government, or it can be a danger for this government?
See, I very well at some level agree with you that whatever student movements have happened in different campuses over these 4 or 5 years,
because it is like a trend,
right,
from the last few years,
right,
that every month, or you can say every week we can see the protest from the different campuses of the nation.
Right, and that also from the top, because changes are made at the top, and those changes which are made at the top are destroying the foundational values of institutions which have long served the country. So coming back to your point that whether it will impact the 2019 election, I just feel that, you know, as many people mention, there is no alternative, the Tina factor. My point is that India is a democracy. In a democracy, alternatives emerge. We do not know what the alternative will be, in what form the alternative will be, who will be the leader, which will be the party. But what India today knows, especially many students in university campuses like Manipur University, JNU or Hyderabad Central University, we all know one thing, that we can vote out a government and we can disagree with your policies and still be safe. And I think that is the foundational value, that we feel we will disagree with you in a manner which is of course agreeable, but at the end of the day, this student movement will help in absorbing and assimilating opinions which are contrary to the government's, because our idea is an idea of India which is plural, which is talking about unity in diversity, and which is talking about at some level multilingualism and multiculturalism. One which talks about oneness of the entire country only because of one ideology is something which many students today are disagreeing, and therefore it will show in the coming election.
Thank you, sir, for share your views and suggestions for this government.
Thank you.